One of the most important things to remember is that conflict is it's usually inherently stressful.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Today I'm going to be interviewing a friend of mine, a colleague, Peter Pullicino. He's a mediator in the Canberra region. He's got almost a decade of experience in community mediation. He's a lawyer, social worker. He's got past experience in the public service and in ethics, and that's actually where I met him. And one of the things I'd really like to capture from your experience is your thoughts around conflict, how we approach it, and why it matters.
Thanks, James. It's a sweet intro.
If you were to give advice to folks that are approaching conflict, what's something that you've learned from your experience in mediation that talks about how one approaches conflict? What are the important things for folks to remember?
One of the most important things to remember is that conflict is it's usually inherently stressful. People usually don't call a disagreement conflict unless there is some stressful element. And usually when someone uses the word conflict with me, feel there's an element there where they're struggling and they're having to do some self-care. I really focus on them looking after themselves, because usually if someone's not feeling safe, they're not really able to hear the other person, or really not able to have nuanced conversations with the other person. So whether you're a manager, employee, if you yourself are not in a safe position, you're unlikely to be able to have those receptors up to the subtleties of what's going on.
I work sometimes with people that I coach and looking at difficult conversations. And there's this whole piece that I'm really recently getting excited about, which is around narrative, around stories we tell ourselves, even the stories we tell ourselves about what conflict is or what difficulty is, and how that can affect what we see as possible.
Well, usually if you do have a serious conflict, the things to watch out for are a narrowing down of the stories into very black and white stories, very much me and them, the dehumanizing stories, demonization stories. So these seem to be fairly natural things that people do in a conflict to protect themselves. They come up with simple stories they can tell other people, which describes the kind of pain they're going through. That narrows down the possibilities for a resolution or an amelioration of the conflict. So just being aware that conflict can have an influence in the way that you're viewing the other person, I think is important.
Yeah, and I like that you said that those stories are a natural arising from pain, right? I'm in pain, and so it's easier for me to think of you as a bad guy instead of someone else who's also probably in pain as you approach the conflict.
That's right. So what you get is these simple stories that people tell other people in their network, and then there's an element of bias too. The confirmation bias is a huge one. The story being reinforced, so everything gets filtered through a particular lens. You're looking for things the other person does wrong, so you get this build-up of collection of evidence, and then this is the way that conflicts escalate. Essentially, you're totally missing any nuance. You don't understand where the other person's coming from at all. You're not getting the subtleties, because most people in their own lives, they think they're doing the right thing. Most people are heroes in their own story. So usually the person that you're having conflict with will have a set of reasons why they're doing something. But many people have a real blockage. They cannot describe what the other person thinks and what the other person feels. A large majority of people have real trouble taking the perspective of the other person. It's usually happening on the other side as well.
I'm a trained mediator, but I'm not currently working as a mediator. But one of the things that I've recommended people who are in conflict or approaching conflict is to write a letter to themselves with all of the valid points that the other person might think. And just that act of writing it out helps me then see this connection and think, oh, actually, yeah, he's got a point there. What are some of the tools that you could recommend for people before they get to that escalation of conflict that would help them de-escalate, that would help them connect with the other?
Well, your suggestion is a good suggestion, as in writing out what the other person might come back with. What are their ideas?
Yeah.
Then you come up with proposals that be mutually acceptable. That's it's great preparation. I mean, it's very hopeful.
And that hope and preparation is important. I find sometimes people approach conflict as though I want to win this conflict, as opposed to I want to come to a resolution around the conflict.
There's this investment in being right and getting it right.
Yeah. What would you do to help shift people from that investment of I've got to be right?
What we're trying to set up is a different process to the native process that exists outside the room. Jockeying with each other over competing points, it's not really useful. This is the value add for a mediator. They're exposing people to a different process. So if, let's say, one of your clients has 2 employees in conflict, and when one of the most important things you can do is set up an alternative process that does not resemble what they're currently doing. So just try something different. And I think a lot of mediators around the world will use something like that. To slow things down, do something different. Even if you don't have a mediator, you can say to someone in an argument, you can say to someone, look, just humor me. Reflect back to me what the points I'm trying to make to you. And I'll do the same for you. But just humor me. If there's some goodwill in that relationship and you can draw on to do something like that, it's incredibly powerful. And you don't know how powerful it is until you've tried it. People are emotional beings. They're group signaling beings. They learn logic through school. Logic does not run the world. So being aware of what's going on internally for you and being able to tap into what's going on for the other person opens up a whole other world.
There's some deep wisdom there, because you're looking at then if you can understand your own visceral reactions to whatever's being said by the other, and you can start to understand that those visceral reactions impact the other as well. And you can start to understand the dynamic and how we can then build a better future then together in this relationship. Thank you so much, Peter. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, James.
If you'd like to learn more, contact me, info@insightfulpath.com.au, or James Samana on LinkedIn. I look forward to talking with you. Bye.
Like I would just enjoy talking to you without this sort of extra gloss of the recording. I mean, I would, I've been longing to catch up with you.